Hello everyone, my name is Christian. Welcome back to Tekpon. Today our guest is Shailendra, the CEO and co-founder at HyperTest. Hello.
Hey, hi, Christian. Good to be here.
Very nice to meet you. Please tell us what is HyperTest.
Okay, so HyperTest, Christian, is essentially a QA and test automation tool that solves the problem of regression. So essentially, a lot of fast-growing teams want to build software at a really accelerated pace. And when they do that, the one thing that irritates them the most are errors or bugs or issues in their application. And what teams typically try to do is then invest in hiring QA engineers who then build a testing practice to catch these problems as early as possible. What we do at HyperTest is enable or support these
Okay.
QA teams so that they can do their job better. And we simplify it in a manner where whatever they're able to achieve, we help them achieve them in one tenth the time. So they end up catching more issues that helps them improve the quality of their software, and we help them do that in very less time. So that helps them be more productive at their job.
I understand. What would you say is your most loved feature?
I think the most loved feature at Hypertest essentially is to help the teams that we support, ideally testing teams, to be able to create uh, test, as I said, at one tenth the time. That's creating and maintaining test cases where QA teams spend most of their time when they're doing their
Mhm.
job of testing their software. Our most loved feature is giving them the ability to create these tests automatically in one tenth the time.
Okay. I love to hear an example of a happy customer, a success story.
So one of one of the oldest and I'd say the most happiest customer that we have is a public company here in India. It's called Nykaa. It is it's essentially the Amazon in the beauty space. It
Hmm.
just went public last year, and it's been a success story in its own regard. So it's a large company, and it has grown at an alarmingly fast pace. So we started working with them about 2 years back, and they're still a customer. So here in India, if you're building a B2B software and you're able to retain a customer for 2 years, it's essentially called as a success story in itself because it's a very competitive, hard, price-sensitive market. So when we started working with Nykaa about 2 years back, despite it being a very mature engineering organization, they still had, problems, or they did not have the complete confidence that they were not releasing bugs or issues into their software, or they were very mindful because they were a large brand that their users should not have a bad user experience with their application because of incipient bugs and issues.
Hmm.
So we started working with a mature organization. We were an early, probably a second or third customer, and the value that we were able to bring to them was to the point that whatever they were already doing as part of their testing process, they made Hypertest their default testing tool. And as I said, they stayed for us for about 2 years, which itself is a testimony to the fact that what we were able to bring on the table in terms of productivity and the confidence in of the quality of their software has helped them or has made them stick with Hypertest for the last 2 years. And we saw their entire journey from being a private company to becoming a public company. And they used Hypertest. They kept using Hypertest as their default testing tool.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing. How much do you think it helped that you had such a big customer from the beginning in order to gain other customers?
Yeah, absolutely. So look, one thing that as founders of startups we can't control is who do we work with as our early customers. It could be a large company or it could be a startup like us. At that early stage, what we're hungry for is quick early feedback and some validation in the market that helps you understand if you're moving the right direction. What really worked well in our case was that we were able to work with a really large, mature engineering team like the one that I talked about with Nika. The good thing about that was that large enterprises or mature organizations have problems which are very specific to them. Problems around scale, reputation, customer experience, which are very different from startups. So, for large
Hmm.
mature organizations, have a bigger stake on reputation versus startups. So when we started working with Nykaa, they had the most strictest requirements in terms of what they expect from the software, in terms of quality, in terms of performance, in terms of scalability. And since we were put to the strictest test right at the early stages of building the software, uh, our our focus on quality or our focus on performance was inbuilt in the software from day one. So the good thing that happened with the large organization is that they stress tested the system in the right way, which could not have happened had we worked with a younger organization. And because of doing that, when we scaled and acquired customers after that, the good practices that Nykaa had forced us to build, Nykaa had forced us to make part of our, building the software, helped us acquire all customers thereon at a much easier pace. So Nykaa and customers like that were hard to acquire, but because of the good practices they helped us build in HyperTest, all subsequent customer acquisitions were really a breeze.
Makes total sense. And what would be your best tip for a startup that's looking to get an enterprise customer?
So as I said, I think startups should not plan get to either get a mid-market or an enterprise customer at that early stages. As I was
Mm-hmm.
explaining you, at that stage, what is important is to just get validation. Just get started or get work with any company or any team that gives you the opportunity. So most early adopters, you should not look at early adopters by their size or how mature or how big they are. It makes no difference. What you should definitely look at is that enterprise customers have a very different way of looking at a software than in startup, which generally means that startups are more, flexible on your software, being a little rougher on the edges. It's not a complete product. It is, it is not. It doesn't cover all the bases. Does not check everything does not check all the boxes. Enterprise
Yeah.
customers scrutinize your software a little heavily. So I would advise, in fact, against the journey that I was taking, that I think as if you're building a software and you are in the early stages, maybe a year or even lesser than that into building your software, pick any startup that's not going to scrutinize your software that hard. Look for adopters that are willing to, ignore the early mistakes that you make when building the software, and they're just interested to solve the pain that you're trying to solve and are willing to ignore everything else that comes with it. So I would advise startups to pick an adopter, irrespective of the size or the stage. Anybody who's willing to ignore the small problems that are there in your software.
That's a very interesting perspective. Wow. What is the pricing for HyperTest?
So Hypertest is basically uh, it generally it works at a single license. So we basically have one universal license that we offer to organizations using which they can uh, uh, test any number of micro applications or microservices. So the world that we live in, or the problem that we are trying to solve, is giving teams the ability to test microservices well. Microservices are essentially micro applications that make up the large application. So
Mm-hmm.
we offer our clients a single license using which they can test unlimited number of microservices. It starts at close to about $2,500 a month, which comes with all our enterprise features, and we've got about 5 to 6 enterprise features at the top end of our license that we offer at $2,500 a month, and then it goes down to 2,000. Goes Our most basic license goes down to about $2,000 a month. So between $2,025 a month, we offer our startup from the basic to the most enterprise version.
I understand. I understand. And how competitive is this space? You already mentioned that it was hard to get your first customers, yeah, due to pricing.
So basically, globally, the market that we are operating in, which is called API testing, is close to about $2 billion market.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, like for all enterprise tools, most of our customers happen to sit in US. We've got about 3 customers there. We're a young company, so since we were located here in India, most of our early customers were acquired in India. So India
Yeah.
technically is not a very large or deep, B2B or a software market. So the space we operate in, it's a $2 billion market, and we want to now focus on getting more customers in US, which happens to be the natural market we want to focus on. And we started in India just because of geographical proximity. But now we've got ourselves registered as a US company. We are now actively selling in US. We've got a team there. But in terms of competition, the largest player that we compete with, at least uh, directly or indirectly, is a company called Postman. It's a pretty large company, also founded by Indian engineers. It's a 10-year-old company. Its name is so ubiquitous that anybody that thinks about API testing thinks about Postman. And what we believe is that what we're trying to do is essentially anybody who thinks he's trying to solve for API testing using Postman, we're trying to build a 5x better version of that software that can help him solve for API testing. So in terms of competition, there are a lot of other players as well. But the names that people commonly remember are Postman, Cathlon, and now there are a lot of upcoming players that are trying to compete with them. But yeah, Postman and Cathlon I'm assuming would be the most known names in this space, which we are directly competing.
And now, if you were to launch again with your knowledge today, would you still go for early Indian customers, companies from India, or would you go directly to the US and conquer the US market?
Oh, that's a great question. In fact, I would say that if I had to do it again, I would think about US day zero. I would not start from India, not because India is not a deep enough market or my long-term focus is not in India, but generally, if you as a founder personally believe that US is your you know US is your logical or natural market, you should start from that market from day zero. I should try to figure. That's not easy for all founders, especially sometimes when founders are not physically located in US. But that's not difficult to think in terms of go-to-market strategy, even if you're not physically located in US. For example, a lot of companies in India, which are in enterprise SaaS, which are located in India, but been focusing on US clients, through and through. So I don't think it makes much of a difference where your physical location is. But if you believe very strongly that US is your market, you should start focusing on the market from day zero. I wouldn't start from India if I start all over again.
Thank you for sharing. I'd love to know when did you start the company and how did you come up with the idea?
Okay, so I've been a product and engineer for the better part of 10 years. I've been a serial entrepreneur, built several products in the
Hmm.
last 10 years. And what I'm trying to solve through HyperTest is basically essentially a personal problem that I went through when I was building products in my previous startups and across a few other companies that I've worked with. And I figured that the biggest pain in building, so when you're building products or you're building software, there are essentially two things you're doing. You're either writing software or you're testing software, right? So what I saw in my own experience the last 10 years is that for engineers who are writing software, there's a lot of tools available that has made writing software pretty easy. What engineers took about 4 to 6 months to build about 10 years back when I graduated out of college and started building software. Engineers now can accomplish that same level engineers can now build softwares of the same complexity in less than 2 to 3 weeks. So there are enough tools available out there which has made the job of writing or building software much easier, or at least fast enough. But that has not happened for testing. And I saw this as a personal problem that there were a lot of tools and approaches available to build software faster, but testing still was done in the same old, archaic, antiquated manner like it was done 20 years back.
Yeah.
And if you're not able to test software as fast as you're writing software, delivery gets impacted, right? If you want to go to market in 2 weeks and your engineer is able to build the software in say in a week's time, but your testers or your QA people are still taking another week to test that software, you're essentially losing time. And in the software space, in the business space, people who are able to get to market earlier, the people generally who are ahead of the curve. So that got me thinking, and I scanned the space. I figured that nothing really has come out of the testing market in terms of tools or approaches that is really, solving the use case or at least solving for speed. And I was actually building a product in the last startup that eventually failed, where I met my co-founder, and this got us thinking, and we were essentially trying to solve a personal problem, as I said, right? For the last product that we were building, we personally were very frustrated at the number of bugs or issues we were leaking into our software on a daily basis, and the kind of tools that we were offered to test our software were essentially not solving for speed, neither for quality. So that got me and my team member in the last product thinking as to what needs to be done to make this a more simpler and a pleasant experience for engineers so that they can launch their softwares as fast as they're building it. And then that got us thinking. We tried a couple of approaches. I had a good network here in India, being an engineer for 10 years. I showed it around to a lot of people in my network who are also product and engineers, and they liked it because everybody was going through the same problem. Almost everybody complained about how slow testing makes releases. And then we started building the software. So it took us about a year to build the software. It's a pretty complicated, sophisticated software, at least on our part. It's pretty easy for the customer. And we got a few of these people that we were talking to signed up as our early customers. So they were interested in our approach. They were very patient with us because they knew that we were onto something that could be very promising. And after we built the first version of the product, which was, at that stage, very functional, but not to the expectations of a large company. These couple of people signed up. That gave us the confidence this is something, we are onto something. And then eventually, we signed up more bigger and marquee customers. So that's how, we came up with this idea, and that's how we were able to build this product.
I appreciate the transparency. Thank you. How big is your team right now?
Close to about 20 people. Majority of them here in India, and a couple of folks in US.
Have you raised any funding?
Yeah, we raised a funding. We raised close to about $1.5 million from a couple of investors, a couple of VC funds, and then a few angels, individuals, as they're called, from our network.
And how confident you are that you found product market fit?
I would say we are still in early stages. We work with close to about 35 companies here in India. When I say 35 companies, I think I mean close to about 70 to 80 teams or more.
Okay.
So we are still early stages. We are close to about $350,000 in ARR. So I think we're in the right direction. Generally, even products which are doing about $1 million in ARR claim that they are in early stages of product market fit. So I would say that we are, in early stages of product market fit. We've got very strong traction here in India. In fact, in the last year, almost all the customers that we signed last year renewed this year, which means that the product has become pretty stable. There is absolutely no question on the pain or the problem that we're trying to solve. So we've got a very strong problem solution fit, I would say. So it's a real problem out there in the market, and people are looking out for a solution for this. When it comes to product market fit, we are in still early stages of building a product that would solve the problem exactly in the manner the customers desire. As I said, about 80 odd teams are using HyperTest. But I would say we're in the right direction, and a strong point of that is that we've got a very strong renewals last year. We've got a very strong net NDR, net dollar retention. So I think we're moving in the right direction, and this next year is going to be very, very crucial as we explore the US market to figure out whether our pricing, product, features, everything is bundled together well for customers to see value.
What has been your best growth tactic for gaining new customers?
How do we get our clients? 60% of our effort is content. So we put a lot of content out there through our LinkedIn channels, blogs. We do a lot of webinars to educate, our ICP or our buyers or, our prospects as to what the pain that we're trying to solve. I do a lot of that personally. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I put a lot of posts out, explaining the problem to our to fellow engineers or fellow CTOs and director engineering. And then the rest 40% is split between inbound and outbound. So we do a lot of inbound. So we focus on a lot of marketing channel partners. And we do also do a lot of outbound. So we reach out to prospects via email, again talking about the problem. But yeah, most focus is on content.
Thanks for sharing. I'd love to hear more about retention. You already mentioned it, and I'd love to hear how you've done it. Your advice for companies looking to increase it.
Okay. So look, I think retention in the early stages, I personally feel that startups should not worry too much about churn at the early stages, because when you are building a product, sometimes you do end up signing customers who are looking for something completely different than what you're trying to build because of the promise. That's not been that big a problem for us. But the way to sort of manage retention is to invest in customer success right from day one. That's what we've done. We have a very senior customer success personnel who leads our customer success team. So basically, our process is pretty simple. Once we sign the contract with the customer, there is a dedicated SPOC that comes into play that helps the customer get trained on the software, understand how is he doing with the software. Essentially, basically, understands the health of the customer post onboarding, do NPS, CSAT, all that. So we invested in that process from day zero. We ensured that even if the product is rougher on the edges, it doesn't have the great UI, at least it has great support. Well, that is what we can manage from day zero, where obviously UI and UX are things which iterate over a period of time. You eventually build a good UI and UX or the list of features their customers desire, but you can have a good customer success process from day zero. You can make your customers feel special, feel good about support from day zero. So I think I would advise all startups, to not ignore customer success. Most startups that are found, started by engineers specifically, the kind of profile that I have, they tend to believe that if you build a good product, customers would come and customers would stay and they would keep using it. That's not the case. Customers, however smart your target audience is, they need to be handheld, they need to be guided, they need to be onboarded, trained well. So I did not do that mistake. I invested in a very smart customer success manager from day zero. He built a fantastic process, and we've never lost a customer due to poor support. So because I knew that we'll not be able to build the perfect software from day zero, it's going to take a lot of time. But what I can at least ensure is that my customers feel that they're loved. So a good way to manage retention is to make sure that your customers feel that they're heard, listened to, their complaints are immediately resolved. But if you can do that, these customers will become your champions.
Absolutely. What has been your biggest challenge since starting the company?
Well, I think the biggest challenge for any startup is people. I think I personally believe that more than technology, the biggest moat that startups should concentrate on is hiring the best talent, building a good team, because you can't build it alone. And if you're trying to, start a company or build a product, it's mostly a 10-year journey, right? You basically have to be patient for at least the next 8 to 10 years to build something of value. And you can't do it alone. So you need good people to join you. And like all teams, like all startups, almost everybody is competing for the same set of smart guys to join your journey versus not joining somebody else's journey. So talent is the biggest challenge I would feel that I have now, and I'm trying to solve for it, but I'll continue to have it. I don't think we are operating in a space where market is that big a challenge, because we are operating in a space that the market is pretty big. The problem is well understood and people want to solve the problem. So the market is not a challenge at all. Product remains a challenge as long as you are willing to innovate. For example, now with the age of ChatGPT or the age of GPT, almost all businesses are getting disrupted. So definitely, technology-wise, the new age in the age that we're living in, GPT has become a challenge. But putting all together, I would say my two biggest challenges would be talent, and I think second would be to some extent, external factors like GPT. What I would say, technology.
Yeah. I'd love to hear background story. So how you started your career, right from college, let's say.
Okay. So I graduated from Ministry of Technology, which happens to be the most premier engineering institutions in India.
Wow.
I was a product guy. I landed my first job. I was placed out of college in a company that I did not want to work at, because I was not the guy who could do a regular 9 to 5. I was not built for that. The good thing that happened in college was that I was able to figure that out pretty quickly, that I was not built for a regular 9 to 5. So I stayed out of college. The company that I joined was not the company that I wanted to work with. So I experimented a lot. I joined a small startup. It was run by a very dynamic, a very enterprising and ambitious guy of the same age as me. So my first, lesson in entrepreneurship, or why it would suit my style, came by working with that guy. I had moderate success there. I was eventually, I became almost, the most key person in the company after the founder. And then eventually I figured that product is the place. Product is where I get most of my, comfort from. I like building products, creating products. I like the joy of creating stuff, handing it out to people, and then feeling, really proud when people come back and say that, hey, you built something really nice. And then it caught on, and then I started a company after that. After leaving that company, built that off to considerable value. Then came on board as a very early guy at a company called Oyo Rooms, which is a pretty large, tech-enabled hotel chain in India. It's going to go public in the next 6 months. So I was a key person there. Stayed there for about 2 years, and then exiting that, once it had become really large, and large setups or large teams is where I become uncomfortable. I figured there's nothing more to do my last company had grown to a certain size. I decided to exit, and then eventually started HyperTest. So it's been 10 years since I graduated from college.
An overnight success, right?
Not an overnight success. Yeah.
Of course. I'd love to hear your best piece of advice for a starting founder.
Well, I think I would say, for the advice that comes to mind is, don't start because it seems pretty cool, because startups is really hard, and don't start something that is outside your domain knowledge. So I would not advise uh, people to start a company straight out of college unless they've done something in college which they feel, to, can be scaled, or built. The only way it can scale to a certain degree is that they continue doing it. I would say gain some experience, go and work somewhere for about 3 to 4 years, build some form of solid expertise by working somewhere, or try to understand a problem upfront. So if I were to do it again, I would try and go out and work at a company and figure out the kind of problems that large companies have, or they are trying to solve, but they don't, because the large companies normally are very slow moving. So don't start a startup because it seems pretty cool, because it's a lot of hard work. Start a company only when you know of a problem and you feel personally frustrated that nobody else is solving it, and that should be your only reason to start a company. You have been able to come across a problem and you feel that, hey, if I don't solve it, somebody else will, or this is a problem that is, painful enough for somebody to solve it. Don't start something because it seems cool, because everybody is doing it, and we see a lot of success stories floating in the market where people, it seems like people are becoming overnight stars. That's not the case. It's obviously the hard grind of 5 to 10 years. So startups are hard. Businesses are generally hard. I would say only start when you personally believe that this is a genuine problem that needs to be solved, and don't take the extra pressure of solving a problem overnight. Most good companies mature over a period of about 8 to 10 years. So it's okay if you start at some half-baked version of the problem that you are trying to solve. Your solution is a half-baked version of what you would eventually solve, but only start when you strongly believe that this is a problem that is worth solving. There should be no other reason to start, unless you think that there's a problem that is worth solving.
You said it perfectly, so I have nothing else to say. I have only one last question, which is a very short question. What's your favorite SaaS product apart from HyperTest?
Okay, all right. That's a great question. In fact, I personally spend a lot of time on Notion. So Notion happens to be the best product the product that I like. Not the most, but maybe in my list of top five products, I would say Notion would rank the most. The second product I like the most is Airtable. So I used it a lot, and I really liked how they've just reinvented the entire CRM category. Made it really, it really, it looks like this was something that was waiting to happen for the longest of times, with CRM being a very boring category, really made it very cool and sexy. I would say Notion and Airtable would probably be the two products that I like using the most.
Thanks for sharing. Is there anything else that you want to mention on today's podcast?
No, I think it's a great conversation with you, Kristen. I would say I wish you all the best. This is a good initiative you guys have taken, and I'd love to stay connected and maybe listen to any of the videos that you've done with other SaaS founders. It's a good community to build. Founders helping other founders is always a good place to be.
Thank you so much for joining and thank you for the kind words.
Thanks, Kristen. Thanks you. Take care. Have a good day. Bye.